In this lesson, we'll learn how to repair an image using the Spot Healing Brush here inside of Photoshop. All right, great. So I've got here a rather old photograph that we're going to work on in this lesson. So there are a number of tools that can be used to heal different areas of a photograph. But one of the ones that I use most often is called the Spot Healing Brush. And if we come over here, right underneath this little perforation below the eyedropper, there's a little icon of a Band-Aid with a little, looks like marquee selection behind it. If we tap and hold on that, you'll see it's called the Spot Healing Brush tool. So we can go and grab that one here. Now, the keyboard shortcut for this is J, and there were several different tools in that stack. You can see here that they all have that same keyboard shortcut assigned to them. If you want to hold down the Shift key, you can cycle through those. So, now, as with any tool in Photoshop, we need to think about destructive versus non-destructive workflows. So if I were to come in and start trying to heal this image right on top of the background layer, then that's destructive. We're destroying those pixels. So with this button right here, Sample All Layers, up inside our control panel, we have the ability to make these spot heals on a new layer here. So let's come over and create a new layer, and we'll just double click on it and name it Healed, something like that. So with the Spot Healing Brush, there's a number of different ways that we can actually use it here. Now, immediately to the right here, we actually have a blend mode option. Now, if we were to look at the blend modes for this particular tool, you'll see here that there's really just not an enormous amount of them. Several of them we have seen before, and if you've experimented some with blend modes, then you should know what they pretty much do. But there is one right here called Replace that is new, and we haven't actually seen that one before. So let's go ahead and leave this on normal for right now. And we're going to bounce over here to Type. We'll look at that Replace here in just a moment. There's 3 different types of spot healing we can do. Now, the newest and probably the one that I use most often is the Content Aware Spot Heal. So Content Aware is going to look at areas around where we paint. And let me just use my bracket keys to make my brush larger here. It's going to look at areas around where we paint, and it's going to try and fill in areas that we paint with areas around that. So if I were to come in here and just kind of paint over that, you can see here that because I didn't have Sample All Layers on, it didn't do anything. So let's go ahead and turn that on, and I'll just paint over that little area right there. And you can see it actually did a pretty fair job of removing that black stain. So now if we come up here and try and do the same thing maybe right here, just kind of paint in an area, you can see, again, it's bringing in information from around. So some of this area where there's that texture around, it's also starting to sort of bring that in down here. So now when it comes to kind of spot healing your images like this one, I find that you want to come in and make really small changes. You don't want to come in and color an entire area like this, because it's going to really, one, it's going to take Photoshop a lot longer to calculate what should go in there. And 2, you're going to end up with, if I undo and redo that, you can see here how not only did it remove that, but it also altered the detail in the image. So kind of best practices when using spot healing is to do it a little bit at a time. So if I came up here and kind of worked on this, you can kind of see just painting over those little stains there. Now, when it comes to the different modes here, again, there is one called Create Texture. This was going to work for an area where there's a very fine texture. Photoshop's going to look for that texture. Now, in this particular example, I don't know that there's a good example in this image of a nice fine texture. Maybe we can come in here, and you can see there's a little bit of texture in the results. So not a great example of that. Now, Proximity Match is sort of similar to Content Aware. Again, it's looking at pixels around to try and kind of fill in the area you paint. But you can see it's not always as effective as Content Aware. So let's come back to Content Aware, and I'm just going to kind of start to pull in. And you can see it's doing a much better job at sort of filling in this area where there's actually a piece of the image that's torn out. So now, what I mentioned earlier about the mode that we're using this in. So the replace mode, you can see here that it got bumped down to that at some point. Replace simply means that we're going to look to preserve things like film grain and other artifacts that maybe we don't want to get rid of in the edges of our brush. So you can see here we have this drop down, again, where we can do some basic configuration for our brush. In this case, my hardness is set all the way up, but if we were to ramp this all the way down, you can see that my brush stroke is much softer now. So let me hold Alt and right click and drag, and I'll make my brush stroke larger here. And we'll see if we can't find some kind of grainy areas here, maybe in her cheek. You can see here that wasn't a really good example. Maybe up here. Let's come in and turn the softness down just a little bit, or the hardness back up. So it's maybe really hard to tell, but right over here, kind of in the areas where the brush tip is softer and kind of feathered, that's where the preservation of things like film grain and other artifacts are going to happen. So unless you have a very specific type of maybe noise in your image that you're wanting to preserve, I would just leave this on normal. And honestly, most of the time you can get away with using a hard edge brush. So you can see this particular image has quite a bit of things we can start to come in and work at healing. So there's cracks in this image. If you look really closely, there's actually some what looks like ink lines that run kind of down this like so. Now in this case, for these type of lines, you might want to hold the Shift key, which will allow you to draw sort of a straight line and start to remove those. But you can see here, again, drawing a straight line, you can actually sort of see that line there. So maybe a better option in this case, if I step back using Control-Alt-Z a few times, is to come in and just work at these lines a little bit at a time. So like I said, kind of my typical workflow when using the Spot Healing Brush to clean up an image is just take it a little bit at a time. Don't get in a hurry with it. It's kind of a labor of love, and the less area you tell this tool to kind of clean up at one spot, it seems like the rate of success for cleaning that area up is going to be much higher, and if it's got a much smaller area to work with. So you can see how now when we kind of zoom out on that, you really can't see those vertical banded lines through there. So anyways, this image has quite a bit of really just age to it. If you want to continue using this tool and practicing with the Spot Healing Brush, again, this is just one of the healing tools here inside of Photoshop. In the next lesson, I want to show you another tool that is really quite popular and really effective for replacing information in an image. It's called the Clone Stamp tool.